VP of Web International Media presents the radio program Awaz International. This program is presented with the help of Punjab Rocks. It's April 12, 2020. Sunday evening in Toronto. I'm Bhatti and I will be your host for this program. If you want to be the part of this program, please follow our page on Facebook named Awaz International. It's spelled as AWAZ International. If you are a storyteller or love to sing, please send your recorded message on same page, as well as just remember not to add any music in that, which is downloaded from YouTube. If you have created your own music, you certainly can use that. And I would love to introduce our today's guest. Our today's guest is Sabrina Bhatti. Sabrina, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Sabrina has brought us very good information about newcomers in Canada. So Sabrina, before we begin the show, please introduce yourself. What do you do?
I am currently a student in an early childhood education program. One of my course requirements for my program is to join a group and to take on a role advocating for a cause which we believe in. Through the personal experiences of my group mates, who are both international students from Brazil, and my own experience with my family's adaptation here, and also the many people whom we've helped when they've come to Canada, we were all very well aware that coming to a new country is very difficult.
Certainly.
We decided that we were interested in finding ways to assist newcomers with their transition here. When we decided to try to do something to help people, we first began by doing research. We did interviews and surveys with people who are in the Toronto area, and we also researched online to see what people who've immigrated felt was difficult for them when they've come to Canada. The people we spoke to ranged from international students to new immigrants who'd come in the past few years, and then also to people who'd immigrated quite a while before. So that could be people who were here as on work visas from 10 to 20 years ago, as well as people who came as children with their families. Finally, one of our specific focuses was how to help children who are new to the country, and so we also surveyed educators in the Greater Toronto area.
Mm-hmm.
These were people ranging from preschool to college educators. And finally, we spoke to some of the local agencies which offer services to new immigrants to see what they found was most accessed and in need.
Good.
Through this, we found that most people are happy to have come to Canada and enjoy things such as the education system, healthcare, and the acceptance they received from their communities. Quite a few of our respondents came here to join family, whether that was a spouse, their parents, or children who were here before. And so they were also very glad to be reconnected with the people they loved. What we found in doing our research is the path which people take to come to Canada seemed to affect how much difficulty a person had with adapting. So for example, people who came as international students reported different difficulties compared to people who came through family sponsorship, whose difficulties were also different from those who came through work visas. I'm going to mention some of the things which people have had difficulty with and which you should also consider if you're interested in immigrating to Canada.
Perfect. So it will be, the information you will be sharing will be very helpful to the newcomers and also to the people who are listening, because our program is listened. We have the listeners from all over the world. So they can, if they are planning to come to Canada, so they can go through all these, the helplines and then the information you are going to share with us. So first of all, let's talk about it, like when they come, when somebody just comes to Canada, what sort of difficulties or issues they have found as a new immigrant?
Well, first and foremost, one of the main difficulties that people have is finding their first job. Unfortunately, we found that this was something that was difficult across the board for newcomers. We didn't interview any employers to see what their thoughts on these difficulties might be, but our respondents cited issues such as employers not being comfortable hiring them due to their visas, language bias, or lack of Canadian experience or education.
Correct.
From my own personal previous experience as a recruiter, I know that sometimes a simple thing such as the formatting of a resume can make an employer not consider an applicant.
Right.
Different countries have different expectations for what to place on a resume. And there are many things that are acceptable in other countries but will make a Canadian employer avoid contacting you because of the potential legal consequences. Employers here in Canada are not allowed to ask questions about your age, your ethnicity, or your marital or family status during interviews.
Correct.
And unfortunately, this is information that is commonly expected in some other countries.
Right.
So having this on your resume here in Canada can scare employers off of even meeting you. Without knowing this, people can come to Canada and basically start off on the wrong foot when it comes to their job search by including these details, or even by including their picture when they might think that they should have this there because it's common where they've come from. So something else that a person should keep in mind when they are coming to a new country is to do some research on what the requirements are to work in their industry in Canada before they even leave home. So for this, you might need to make sure that you have your education certified before coming to Canada.
Right.
You can also do this once you're here as well, but it's usually easier to do it in one's own country. Now, in terms of making sure that your resume is well suited to what's expected in Canada, we do have many agencies here which help people who are newcomers enter the job market. These agencies do things like help with creating or updating your resumes and cover letters. They help you find job boards or job postings that are relevant to you. Now, in Canada, it's important to note that these agencies cannot charge people who want to use their services. They are provided for free. That being said, it's very important to remember that these agencies will not guarantee you employment. They cannot find you work, and they will not get you a job. Instead, they will help you learn how to do an effective job search here in Canada and help give you the best possible chance to find work.
Yes, so basically you're saying like what they need is like to put on their resumes before they apply for any job, and what they're supposed to put it in their cover letter. So these agencies can help them according to the job, their job posting, and according to the job's descriptions, so they can help you make their resumes.
Yes, and also according to what the standard expectations for resumes are here in Canada.
Okay, great information. So Sabrina, what else do new immigrants need to keep in mind when they're moving somewhere new like us? Before they land, well, basically that's what we can say. What should they also keep in mind?
Well, something that we found that our respondents had difficulty with, which is pretty integral to getting settled here in Canada, is with finding housing.
I see.
So some of our respondents, especially those who came as international students or those who came on work visas,
yes,
had a lot of difficulty with finding their first house in Canada. With the international students, we found that some of them used agencies from back home to help them with their application process. And these agencies were also supposed to help them with setting up their first home, with getting their applications done.
Right.
But unfortunately, we found that quite a few of these agencies didn't actually provide when it came to giving the housing. So sometimes those houses weren't available, and other times the housing wasn't adequate for what the people needed. Now, even trying to apply to live in student residences was difficult for many of our respondents, often because the institutes they were going to didn't provide them with proper information, or the residence was simply too expensive for them to consider. I will also mention, many of the international students we spoke to mentioned that even though they came to institutions which were advertising in their home countries, these schools were still often unprepared for them as international students. These institutions often do not consider what the needs of international students are, and can leave people not knowing how to sort their housing, find medical care, or find their way around the communities. To come back to difficulties with finding housing, other new immigrants found that a lack of credit score was a barrier when trying to find housing. Many landlords are uncomfortable renting to people who've not yet built a financial history here, which makes it very difficult for new immigrants to rent. It also makes it difficult for people to qualify for mortgages. So even those who come with a good amount of savings can face difficulty. People with low or no credit score will often need to pay an extra deposit on top of the first and last month's rent, which is normally asked for. This is considered a damage deposit and can range in amount, usually up to an extra month's rent. Other people may be able to have co-signers who are already established here in Canada and will vouch for the newcomers. They will need to have a good credit score themselves, along with providing a job letter. And they are basically taking on a guarantee that should the newcomers not be able to pay their rent, that they will be able to assist. Working with a real estate agent can help newcomers navigate finding a new home. Navinder, I know that you are a real estate agent in Toronto and the GTA. Do you have any advice for listeners on how they can find a reputable agent to work with?
Yes, certainly, Sabrina. What they can do is, like, before they plan their move here, before they're coming here, when their immigration stuff, all the permits, all the immigration papers they receive, so they should start looking for the real estate companies here wherever they are moving in. If they're moving in Toronto, in the GTA area, so they can search for the real estate agent in GTA and then search for the good reputable companies, the brokers. Then their agents are all listed in that company once they visit their website. So go look for the reputable agent and look for the and the one thing before I say anything else I would like to mention, because there are some people, the one they portray themselves as a real estate agent, but they are not a licensed agent. So the newcomers need to know that what is a licensed real estate agent before they choose the agent. Otherwise, there could be so many problems they can be facing. So once they are choosing the registered licensed real estate agent, so they can work with them, they can tell them beforehand, they can contact them either via email or by their phone, any way they would like to, and then tell them before they come, like, okay, so we are this many people in the family, so we need 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, or a bachelor suite, or a shared accommodation. So the real estate agent can help them. They can send them the listings even before they move to Canada. So then they can shortlist it, and once they come here, so the real estate agent can show them around, and then they can choose the place they like. One more thing I would like to add is, because a lot of people think that if they hire a real estate agents, they have to pay them the commission. But if the newcomers, they are choosing the listed properties with the Toronto Real Estate Board, they don't have to pay any commission, because usually the listing agents and the listing people, so they pay to the both agents, even to the person who's listing the property and then the person who's bringing the buyers to them or the tenants to them. So they don't need to worry about any commissions to pay to them.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important to know. Now, you did mention that it's important to make sure that you are working with a licensed real estate agent. Can you tell us what is the name of the licensing body that people should look for when they're looking for a real estate agent?
So they can look for it's called, short form is called CREA, Canadian Real Estate Board, and specifically talking about the Toronto and the GTA area is the Toronto Real Estate Board. So who are licensed with the Ontario Real Estate Board, so they are the licensed agents.
Thank you very much. Now, speaking of the difficulties that people have with housing, we mentioned that not having a credit score can bring a lot of difficulties.
Certainly, yes.
And this is also another factor that many new immigrants mentioned. Building a credit score is something that people found difficult. Now, to explain this a little bit, a credit score is basically a rating that we all have to help show how trustworthy we are financially.
Yes.
Not having a credit score does not mean that you have low credit. It means that you have no credit. You have not been here in Canada to show any of the Canadian institutions whether you are a reputable person or not. Unfortunately, not having a credit score can affect people in so many different aspects of life. Everything from housing, as we mentioned, to getting a cell phone plan is affected by not having a score. This often means that people will have to put down deposits to be able to build a base of trust with the different companies.
Right.
This is something that people are often not aware of when coming to a new country, and it really requires that people do their budgeting and save quite a lot of money to be able to make these deposits before they even come here. Things to consider for which you might need a deposit are renting, getting a cell phone plan, setting up utilities like gas and water, and getting internet or cable. Be sure when you do set up all of these utilities after you've arrived here that you are paying your bills on time. This is what helps with building your score. Being able to show that you will pay whatever you owe to others. Now, a note that I would like to share about building a credit score is with regards to getting a credit card. Getting a credit card might seem like a very risky thing to do, especially when you are new somewhere. But it's a very easy way to be able to build your score as long as you are able to manage it appropriately. So this would mean that you are careful to take into account how much money you are spending on your card, and that you also try to pay off your balance on a monthly basis.
Right. I would like to also add that too, because once you are coming here, so your whatever you need, your needs are limited. But as you grow here, as you live here for longer, eventually you want to buy a house later on. So before you get the mortgage, you have to have a good credit score. And maintaining the credit score is not that hard. All you need is to pay a little bit extra care to this one so that you pay your phone bills, your hydro bills, your water bills on time. Because if you're paying them late, that will affect your credit scores negatively, and you don't want to do that. Sometimes what happens is people usually forget and they say like, okay, next month I will pay the double price like for the both, but that's a wrongdoing. That will hurt your credit scores. So pay it on time. Even when you have a credit card and you can't pay the full amount owing, just pay whatever the minimum payment is due before the due date. So that will help you build up your credit for later on needs.
Thank you. Now, something else I would like to talk about that many newcomers found difficult was accessing medical care.
Right.
This is something that affected people differently depending on how they arrived in Canada. It's fairly straightforward for people who've come as permanent residents or on family visas, but it can be a major roadblock for international students. Many schools will provide medical insurance for their students, but these insurance plans are not always adequate. Because an international student is charged for things like their doctor's appointment, which permanent residents and citizens, we are not charged to just go to the doctor. But the amounts provided in a school's insurance can be used very quickly by a single doctor's visit for an international student, simply because there are extra costs associated for them to have the care. Having international medical insurance is often a very important and overlooked consideration for people. It's not something that people would consider when coming to a country which is known for its free healthcare. But it's important to remember who this healthcare is provided to. That being said, I would like to share something which is very important right now. OHIP coverage is not required to visit a COVID-19 assessment center.
Important information for the current time.
So that means if you believe you may have COVID-19, you will not be charged to be tested. Assessment centers in the GTA can be found on the City of Toronto website, so at toronto.ca. There is a COVID-19 link included in their Trending Topics tab, along with health advice. There are also many links to mental health services which are available on the website, which we should all consider making use of at this time. Some of these services are also offered in different languages, so if you are currently here already and if you are feeling that you may need some help, you should check that website out, toronto.ca, look for the COVID-19 information and then the health advice link so that you can find information on accessing these different services.
Great information, especially since everybody in Ontario is Toronto is a lockdown, and sometimes the international students specifically talking about, so they usually think they don't have an insurance, so they can't go see the doctor. So it's a really good information you shared with them. I'm sure somebody can take use of these things.
Now, I would like to talk about a difficulty that some newcomers may have, and that is one of language. This is a factor which either did not affect newcomers very much or had the biggest impact on a person's transition to Canada. It largely depends on how much English you know before you come here. So through our survey of educators and people who came here with young children, we found that in schools, teachers were very good at being able to help children learn English in the earlier grades, but unfortunately it seems that they weren't as supportive as the children got older. Teachers were often much more helpful and considerate in helping younger children integrate into their classrooms than they were for older students. While Toronto area schools provide some ESL-focused upper elementary and high schools, not all of our schools seem to be able to accommodate older children who are not strong in English. This is something to keep in mind if you are coming here with children. Otherwise, there are many ESL schools and programs available for adults who come to Canada and need to learn English. Some are available for free, though others will come with a fee. This should be looked into before coming to Canada and budgeted for depending on a person's need. I am also happy to share that of our respondents who made use of the ESL programs, most of them were very positive of their experience in going to these ESL classes. So that is definitely something to consider if you feel that your English language skills are not as strong as you believe they should be to be able to adapt while here.
Good. Sabrina, there's something also I have in mind because there are so many local service providers are here, the one who can help the newcomers. So what do you need to say about those?
Thank you for bringing that up. The fact that we have local service providers for newcomers is incredibly important. Unfortunately, something that we found, both through our interviews and surveys, was that many people did not make use of any of the local service providers for new immigrants when they arrived here. Some spoke about using them back home. So, for example, with international students, as I mentioned before, many used agencies to help find appropriate schools and to handle the paperwork and to help with finding housing here. But then, when arriving in Canada, they didn't make use of anything that was here. Many mentioned that they believed that they would have to pay to be able to use these services. So it's important to know that we have many newcomer services which are provided for free to new immigrants in Canada. In Toronto, there are many agencies which will help newcomers. The majority, especially those who receive government funding, do not charge any fees at all for their services. While there are some private ones, they will have their fees listed on their websites, and it would also be very easy to find a free service provider for many of the things that a newcomer will need. These agencies do things like help with finding employment. So as we mentioned, there are agencies that will help newcomers with their job search. They also provide childcare or computer access. They can provide language classes or social groups to practice speaking. And they also have food banks for people who aren't as financially secure when they arrive in Canada. My group has created a Facebook group called Information for New Immigrants and International Students in the GTA, on which we will share information for details of different agencies in Toronto and the GTA. However, this can also be found by searching online for immigration services or newcomer services in whichever city you are moving to. It's beneficial to do this whether you are moving to Toronto or any other city or country. For Canada, the Government of Canada website also provides information for newcomer services throughout Canada. The link for this is cic.gc.ca /English /newcomer /services /index.asp. We will also be sharing this on our Facebook group. Something to keep in mind is that at this current moment, many of these agencies are not open for you to actually go physically visit. These are COVID-19 safety measures. However, many of these agencies are providing their services either online or by telephone. So if you are currently here and if you are looking for assistance, you can check these agencies and see if they are able to assist you right now. Though again, also because of COVID, many of them are restricting the work that they do to essential services that are currently needed right now. But contacting them is always beneficial so that you can try to find the information that you need.
Very good information. Sabrina, I would like you to mention the link for your Facebook one more time.
The
group
name,
link, yes.
Our group name is Information for New Immigrants and International Students in the GTA. So it's a very long group name, but you can find our Facebook group by searching for that name.
Great. So we covered basically everything they need to know before they come to Canada, before they are coming here as an international student or as an immigrant. So what are the basic needs we talked about? Sabrina, do you think is there anything else that the newcomers to Canada should be aware of as well?
Well, when speaking of immigrating to Canada, you really do need to consider our weather and our culture.
Yes.
Many new immigrants will learn the true meaning of the word cold during their first winter here.
Especially when they're coming from the Far East, from India or the Asia. The temperature here, the weather here, cold means it's a frigid cold.
Including,
yes.
As I mentioned, my group mates are from Brazil. So same for people coming from the southern hemisphere.
Yes.
It can be very different here than compared to where people are used to. Some of our respondents also mentioned the difference in humidity is noticeable here, depending on where they came from. And that can cause some issues too, just simply from not being aware of it. It's important to remember that in Canada, we can face 5 to 6 months of winter weather. Colder weather generally begins in October and can continue through to April. Snow will generally start in November and can continue on to March. Sometimes even into winter, depending on how unlucky we are that year.
Yes, the snow. Actually, people usually say about it that in Canada you cannot trust the weather because it changes so quickly. It can dip down even up to, we have seen in the history, up to 20 degrees in just one single night. So the weather here is very important for you to know and be prepared for that.
It really is. Coming prepared for the weather can be vital to feeling secure in living in Canada. If you are not in a place where you would be able to find adequate winter clothing, then you should budget to be able to buy winter jackets and gear to be able to survive our frigid winter weather. If you are coming with children, it is also important to note that having snow pants is often required for children in the younger school grades. So that is a different cost, a separate amount to also look into and to budget for.
Right.
Now, to describe Canada's culture can be very difficult.
Yes.
We're not an easy group of people to pinpoint. And because of that, many people will point to symbols or foods that we are known for to try to describe who we are. So, for example, we have an odd love for beavers, polar bears, and moose. And we are also very fond of foods such as poutine and maple syrup.
Right.
Not generally together, but sometimes.
Sometimes, yes.
One of the reasons why Canadian culture is so difficult to pinpoint is that we have a different culture in our cities than it is in the rural areas. And we're also a very large country. So there's a difference in our culture between the East Coast and then a range all the way through to the West. Moving to a big multicultural city such as Toronto, Vancouver, or Edmonton will be very different compared to moving somewhere smaller like Sudbury, Belleville, or Peterborough. The majority of our respondents for our surveys and interviews were from the Greater Toronto area. And so they all reported that they felt very welcomed by their new communities. Unfortunately, we didn't have the range to be able to discuss how people felt when they moved to smaller cities or more rural areas. But we do know that there are some places in Canada where people will not necessarily be as open to or even just as knowledgeable of how to be around newcomers. While moving to a larger city will generally be more comfortable to adapt to, they do also cost more, so that is something to keep in mind. Culture shock is also a very real thing that newcomers to Canada face. Going anywhere that is different from what you are used to will bring challenges. These will be unique to everyone who comes to Canada. But knowing that there will be differences can help you come to terms with the fact that there are going to be things here that you are not used to. Now, as mentioned before, we have made a Facebook group. To share the name once more, it's called Information for New Immigrants and International Students in the GTA. We will share information on agencies which can help newcomers to Canada through this group. We are also currently fundraising for the Abrigo Center. This is an agency which supports newcomers coming to Canada. The Abrigo Center supports newcomers and families in the GTA through services such as counseling to individuals and families who might be affected by domestic violence. There's youth outreach, partner assault response, and community developmental programs for adults, parents, newcomers, and seniors. The community development programs that Abrigo Center offers includes language resources, information on healthcare and social services to newcomers. This is a Portuguese language-based organization, though it does provide service to everyone who comes to them.
Very good information, Sabrina. You have shared such a good information for the newcomers. And I would like to mention, if you are listening to the program right now and you know somebody who's planning to come to Canada soon, so you can share this information with them. The recording of this program will be put on the YouTube channel, which is called VPO Web. VPO WEB. When you search in the YouTube, you can see all the recordings for this one. And if you go check it out, the today's date, the April 12, 2020, on that channel, so you can listen to that recording or you can share it with the friends or family who are planning to come to the Canada, and then they can use the most needed information in this today's episodes. So thank you so much, Sabrina, for being here and sharing all this valuable information.
And thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So friends, this was the episode for today for the program Awaz International, which is brought to you by the VPO Web International Media with the support of Punjab Rocks Radio. So please don't forget to tune in next week, same time, Sunday evening, Toronto time, 8 p.m. And I will bring more new information with you. Bye-bye for now. Take care.